There is a lot of things about what politicians do that make you wonder exactly where they want to go and what they want to do with certain things. Part of the problem is what they're doing, and sometimes what they're suggesting is purely symbolic.
Look, it's every time there's a killing, you know, especially of a young person. There's cameras on. There's, you know, they're out. The aldermen or the politicians are out there they're lined up with the community activists and the police saying, let's end this violence. And so it's that sort of typical thing where they're at these killings they're talking one way, but their actions are different oftentimes, and sadly. And you know, if what's going to change if the alderman or the politician who's in that area isn't taking a bold stand against gangs, whether it's cameras or behind the scenes, you know, it just sort of emboldens the gang. One of the unintended consequences of elimination of patronage, you know, has been, where can a politician go out and find a couple dozen workers, you know, in a pinch, or where can he meet with someone who could say, oh, I can deliver you 25 people to work on election day or whatnot. Well, increasingly that used to be the precinct captains and the people and the patronage workers of the city. Now, with that sort of gone, increasingly it's becoming gangs.
Clearly, the politicians are turning to gangs for muscle on the street. I think it's unseemly and improper, but the practical reality is they are doing it.
You know, you have some, and when I say some, I mean kind of a small percentage of politicians that actually want to try to do something. Okay, mm-hmm. I think they're frustrated because they don't know what to do. Okay, mm-hmm. And I think that frustration is borne out with all of us, really, because mm-hmm. what do you do about it?
We have so many sources of information that don't always, that aren't always used to reinforce each other. So we rely on the police to reduce violence, but a lot of times the schools actually know more than the police do about some of the specific issues, and we have to make sure that there's an information flow there. I think that and we have to also make sure that the interventions that we do are backed up by, are actually evidence-based as well.
There's no fabric of a community. What's in the community? Two things. The Chicago Magazine mentioned unholy alliance with the gangbangers and the politician. It was a good choice of words, unholy alliance, but quite frankly, the unholy alliance, which is being used all the time in these areas, is churches and politicians. That, to me, is the pun intended, the unholy alliance. They use the churches, their influence, because they in fact are the closest thing to a community.
Now, I do think that we bear the burden of our history in Chicago, and we have a long history of vast areas of the city being highly segregated and poorly served by police, education, and everything else, and that we have the legacy of that.
What you got to understand is this outside pressure from all their individual ethnic groups mm-hmm. saying, don't listen to them. Mm-hmm. We're going to take care of you. You belong to our gang and you're part of our family. Mm-hmm. Okay? And that's where these kids get distracted, saying, look at this guy. He's driving this fancy car. He's got all this money. He's got all these women or whatever they want. Mm-hmm. Why the hell should I be in school? I'm not getting anything or getting anywhere being in school. They don't see the value of it. Their parents do the same thing.
If we leave it up to 17-year-olds to protect themselves in a very difficult environment, we're not going to like all the solutions that they come up with. I think the issue of distrust of the police and desire for improved services and so on, those are very potent.
Again, for one, these are kids that, literally kids, some of them, some older than ones have been around, but the kids, they don't have an affinity group. Years ago, they'd have the Boys and Girls Club. There's other things. There's youth organizations. They go, sports always being one. There was a number of programs years ago here that I worked with for years in the Cabrini Green, when there's a different world over there, through Jesse White, Chicago Youth Organization. Mayors youth organization, I forget the terms of them before, but there were programs like this in areas of need. And I myself did it for years at council and coach sports after school. They provided jobs for me when I was going through high school, college, to be counselors in these programs. And the people there, we kept them off the street, and there were people there that gave them opportunities to do something other than go with the next best alternative, or the only alternative today, street gangs.
Gangs are enormously powerful in the city. Some of these neighborhoods almost seem lawless. Generally speaking, we found in our investigation that, a lot of politicians, like to talk about cracking down on gangs and yet continue behind the scenes to, in various ways, either do nothing, turn a blind eye, or in fact even work with them and sort of cut deals with them. Gun control is the easier one to fight. And it's less complicated. In the city, it's easy to say you're against guns. It's also easy to say publicly you're against gangs. It's harder, politically to say you're against gangs. These are people who live in the neighborhood. It's sort of, gangs are sort of a big tent kind of label for people. But these are constituents. These are people who live in the wards and in the neighborhood. So, fighting gun control is sort of the easier of the two for sure.
The affinity group of necessity, if you will, in these areas are gangs.